Alright, we're going to get started on the videos for the Phoebe Mini Backpack. Step 1, this is your 14-inch zipper. If you're using zipper tape like I am, you want the total length to be 15 inches. I have the opening. Since I use zipper tape, I just keep the pole in the center so that both ends are closed. It's easier that way. It closes that way, so the open end is to the left. Alright, so this is my exterior pocket side panel, and we want to not use that one. We want the curve at the bottom, so you want to use this one right side down. My zipper is right side up. Match the short edge to the left, and we will pin. You want your zipper width should be 1 1/4 inches, and it will be the same width as these side pocket panels. Alright, and it's really important in this pattern to pay attention to seam allowance because it does change throughout. Since you're sewing some of the panels onto a zipper, we only use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on those parts. We use 1/2 inch seam allowance on other parts, so just pay attention to that. I have bolded them throughout the pattern, so that should be easier for you to follow along. So with that short end matching to the end, we're going to sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance here. I'm using a stitch length of 3. And I chose like a plum colored thread, so hopefully I don't regret that decision. I don't feel like changing my thread as I go, so we'll see how it works out. Alright, and now you want to take a lining side pocket panel and place it, make sure it's curved the same direction. You don't want to get your seam ripper out already. Clip that underneath, lined up to the same end. And then you can sew from either side. I like to sew from the first side so that I can just sew over my existing stitching, and make sure you back stitch this time. And if you haven't watched any of my videos before, I always try to clip all my seam, or trim all my threads, I'm sorry, as I go, just to avoid having to go over my bag at the end and do that. Okay, now we are going to press both of these, what do I call this? Pocket side panel. Press both of the pocket side panels away from the zipper. Press right there. I'm going to press it really quick. Alright, and then we will top stitch just along the zipper using an 1/8 of an inch. So I always use a 1/8 inch top stitch length unless I specify otherwise, but throughout this pattern, all of the top stitching is an 1/8 of an inch. And also we're going to baste these two panels wrong sides together. So I'm just going to throw a couple clips on there to hold everything because I don't want them to shift. Alright. I try to keep my videos to about an hour, so we'll see how far we get on this one. And I did increase my stitch length to a 4. So I like to use a little bit longer, a 4 to 4.5 for top stitching on fabric. If I was using vinyl, I would top stitch with an even longer stitch length. My sewing machine only goes to a 5, so that's what I would use. Okay, so I top stitched there and basted all the way around using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. And we want to keep this an 1/8 of an inch so that it's not showing on the finished bag, because we do only use a 1/4 inch seam allowance when we sew that. All right, now we're going to do the same thing at the other end. And if you choose to, just be careful to make sure you have everything lined up. You can put your lining and exterior side pocket panels on at the same time. I do that a lot, but it's nice to sew them separately also, just so everything lines up better, less risky. Okay. I'm surprised. I did a little poll on my Facebook page to see which sewing machine, my industrial or my domestic, people wanted to see me sew on, and I assumed it would be the domestic just because I thought that's what most people have. But the majority picked the industrial, which made me happy just because this is what I prefer sewing on. I'm used to this. Alright, I just pressed both of those panels away from the zipper as well. And now I'm going to clip them together, wrong sides together. See how long I can make this video too, because I'm really hungry. It's early, I've had lots of coffee, not lots of food. So, alright, same thing here. 1/8 inch top stitch, and then baste together with a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Really, the most important thing here is just to keep it less than 1/4 of an inch. So if it is slightly over 1/8 of an inch, that won't hurt anything. You just want it to be less than 1/4. Alright, and then I just back stitch at the end to lock the stitches. Alright, so that quickly, we have that part assembled. So now we are on to step 3. We need to find the center of the zipper and mark that. And we need to find the center of what help if I was prepared, huh? Okay. I had to find my chalk marking pencil, and then I have just a regular pen. I'll mark on the wrong side. So let's find the center of our zipper, fold in half, and I am just matching up where I top stitched the side panels on, and kind of press the center there. And this is not actual zipper metal zipper tape. This is nylon that looks like metal. And I bought this from Blue Cala Patterns. And I bought the zipper pulls from Emmeline bags. So I'm just going to mark this on both sides. Okay, and I just mark within the seam allowance. So the seam allowance there will be 1/4 inch. So make sure you mark within 1/4 inch. And now find the centers of both the lining and exterior front pocket panel. So that's the one with the cornered or the squared corners. and mark that. This one should line up with that center line. The pattern calls for the regular exterior fabric for the front pocket, but this is a great place to showcase like a focal print. This is from Juicy Juice for Andover that I'm using, but it also should fit pretty well like some of the custom panels. So let's see, I marked both of those centers on the top and bottom, just on the wrong side. And same thing here. Mark the centers on the top and bottom. All right, so now we will place the right side of the exterior front pocket panel against the right side of the zipper. So this is the exterior front pocket panel. I'll move the interior out of the way. Clips. Okay, and we want to make sure that you're matching this to the curved side. So this side down. First we'll match the centers. And I will sew this with the front pocket up. So I like my clips to face the right direction, which would be this way. And I'm just going to pin or clip. I say pin, no matter what I'm doing, I will say pin. So we'll just keep saying pin. I'm going to pin this along the top and then come down to the bottom. And I actually have a little bit of extra interfacing sticking off. And just since I'm using actual, like only a 1/4 inch seam allowance here, I want to keep things pretty precise. So I'm going to trim off that little bit of extra interfacing. All right, so now, just like this, we're going to match up around the curve. And then the same on the other side. And then once we have all the end pieces and the centers pinned in place pretty well, then you can just go ahead and ease everything around the curves in between. So just like this. All right, and then back over to the other side. Some more clips out. Make sure while you're sewing that you keep that zipper pull out of the way. And if you get to the end there and you seem like you have a little bit extra, clip along the straight edges. Those should match up pretty evenly. And then you'll just move that extra zipper portion up into the curve and then just like repin that part. It cooperates with me here. Okay. And one more. All right, and then I will probably, as I sew around that, move that zipper pull out of the way. So now I sew with the side facing up and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And actually, this time before I started my videos, I pre-wound an extra bobbin. So I was pretty proud of myself because I'm not usually that prepared in advance. Like I couldn't find my chalk pencil. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, which can be a little tricky, and I don't prefer in bag making to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But with the zippers involved the way they are, there was no option. So just take it nice and slow and move the clips out of the way as you go, or pins if that's what you used. Oh heck, this video is going to take an hour just to get around this because I'm so slow. I think that's one of the most important things, though. It's not a race to get your bag done, so I'd rather be slow and not mess up my bag. I don't usually rush my sewing. All right, and if you see how I'm doing, I have my hand underneath, and I just keep it on the zipper and make sure the zipper stays lined up with the edge of the front pocket panel as you sew, and that nothing's getting like folded weird or I always find it easier with one hand underneath in this type of a situation. If I was sewing on a gusset or something, I keep one hand usually underneath if I can. And then also you want to make sure you don't get any puckers, which shouldn't be too difficult because these fit together pretty well. All right, now I'm getting close to the zipper, so I can go just a little further. And I'm going to move the zipper out of the way, back toward where I already stitched. All right, and even though I'm sewing this on my industrial, it is definitely, so you could definitely sew this bag on a domestic as well. You don't need an industrial machine to sew bags. Back stitch, trim my threads, flip this over and make sure that everything, look, I got it off right there. So I kind of go back over and see that everything matches up. If it doesn't, like this, I don't want my zipper tape to be showing more in that area. I'm just going to rip out those few stitches in that spot without stabbing myself, hopefully. Why I'm using this ancient, horrible seam ripper, I don't know. All right, so see just that one part. I will go back and fix that. And what I'll actually do, is where I open the zipper, I got things off a little bit. Let's see. throw a clip on there until I'm ready. Okay, so I want to go back to an area just before where I ripped the stitches out, and I'm going to put a few stitches in and back stitch over that, because we don't want to just have ripped out stitches and have your bag fall apart right there. All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to do this with my needle down. And I'm just guiding that panel where I want it to be on the zipper. Probably scissors are not the best choice. I stab a hole in my fabric, but... Alright, and then once you reach the point where you've already stitched, you can just back stitch over that as well. Alright. I felt like that part was getting off a little bit. It seemed kind of weird when I sewed it the first time. So trim those stitches, flip it over, much better. Make sure that it looks okay from the exterior side, and make sure you don't have any extra threads hanging out of there. Okay. Okay, so that's all sewed on. Now we need to, I'm going to close this zipper back up. And now I will place the lining right side down on top of the exterior. And this is the lining pocket panel, also with the squared corners. And I'm not sewing this to the other side of the zipper. I'm sewing it to the same side of the zipper. And the zipper is sandwiched in between. So just start out by lining up at the top, and I will sew from the other side just over my existing stitching. This part we're not going to sew closed, but I'm going to throw a pin on there just to hold things in place. So just line up the edges with the edges of the exterior pocket panel and pin it all the way around. And your zipper is sandwiched in between. You're not pinning this to the other side of the zipper. All right, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Any parts of it seem like you have a little extra, just work it around and ease it in. That's what easing is, I guess, getting the extra fabric to fit between around the curves. That's a horrible definition. I guess my hope is with the videos that watching me do something will help people to understand it better than reading how I describe it, because some parts are really hard to describe. And I try my best, but sometimes I think it helps to also show in a video rather than just pictures. My final clip. All right. Now we'll start at the bottom, just stitching over the existing stitching. And again, just move the clips out of your way as you go. Be careful not to have any puckers on your exterior. If a couple get into the lining, that would not be as bad as having them on the outside, since you won't see it on the inside. And if your corners, yeah, if your seam allowance, I guess, of the lining kind of comes away and is a little bigger there, that's okay too. We can trim that away. And it will still work out. I'll show you what I mean as soon as I get this done. that bottom one. My zipper feels a little weird there. Make sure you're not folding your zipper up in between it all. So I always run my finger over this point before where I sew, just to make sure the zipper hasn't like folded up under there. The part you're sewing should lay smooth. All the way around. You do not want to trim the seam allowance because you would be trimming off your zipper, and if you trim the edges of your zipper like that, it will fray apart and pull out of your bag. So what I was saying about the lining, this part of the lining, you can see that it extends past the exterior a little bit, and that's okay. You just want to make sure that you still continue to stitch along that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I'm just trimming the lining back on that part where it extended out, just so that I can avoid extra bulk in that area. All right, and now we will turn this right side out through the opening in the bottom. Your zipper is unattached still on one edge. Both panels are attached to the same edge of the zipper. Make sure everything looks good, no puckers. I am going to pause the video and go press this all away from the zipper, and for right now I'll have the zipper face up like this so that we can top stitch around this panel. Alright, I've pressed my panel specifically around the seams, and now I will top stitch this all the way around that seam, around the zipper, using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And as I go, I pull the pocket panels away from the side pocket, or the side panels here and the zipper. I'm just gonna do one little back stitch. Sometimes if it seems like you'll have a hard time getting through something, or, well, like with my industrial, if it is thicker and I just push the pedal harder to make it go through the fabric, once it gets going, it'll go fast. So it's okay to hand crank sometimes to get started. If you need to pull the zipper out of your way, you can, if you're using a wider foot than this. Just don't sew over the zipper pull. And always make sure that you stop with your needle in the down position. But to top stitch nicely around a curve like this, I always just take it a couple stitches at a time and stop to adjust as needed. Okay, I really like this purple thread, so I guess I'm glad I decided to use this. right, and then once you get all the way around top stitching, you will baste the bottom opening of the exterior and lining front pocket panel together using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So you can go ahead and flip that together if you need to, so that they don't shift as you sew. Alright. What did I do with my little... Oh, right here. Okay. So I've stitched all the way around that. There's how it looks from the inside right now. I will go ahead and flip the zipper tape so that it's away from the exterior now. I guess we'll call that. And let's see, we are on step number 7. We want to take the front pocket back, which should be cut out of your lining and should have fleece adhered to it. One second, get this wrinkle out. Okay, so on the front pocket back, we want to mark the center along the top and bottom, and then also we're going to transfer the front top panel placement marks, which is on the front pocket back pattern piece. So first, let's fold this to mark the centers. And I'm just going to put my pen in there. Sometimes with fleece, it's harder to get that, like a finger press, where you can really see it. Okay. So I've marked both of those. Let me get my pattern piece. And we have these marks here, which is used for the placement of the front top panel. So I just fold that out of the way and make that mark. And again here, and just fold that back and make the mark. Okay, so this is what you have. You will now place your so far assembled front pocket lining side up, and this will be lining side down. So lining sides are together. Match the center mark on the zipper to the center mark on the pocket back panel and pin there. And let me just grab a bunch of these. I don't know why I always put all my clips back every time, just to have to pull them all back out again. So I'm going to just throw a couple clips on here to hold the top portion in place. Our weather has been crazy. Right now it's May 4th. So I live in Ohio, northern Ohio, right on Lake Erie, and it was almost 80 degrees, I think, 2 or 3 days ago, and right now it's probably in the 50s, and I'm cold. I'm over it, so over it. Here I'm matching the bottom mark up to, you can see the bottom marks in the center there. So match the bottom center and pin that. And I'll throw a few clips along the bottom here. The bottom corners will not match up exactly because they're pointed. So I'll just go and pin around the curves. And then when I get to the bottom part, just the very corner will be sticking off. And after I sew these together, I'll just trim that corner away. All right, see how the corner sticks off slightly. You just want to make sure that when you sew it, you follow the curve, because the backpack, the finished backpack, does have curved bottom corners. And when you sew this, you sew all the way around. Just keep in mind where the zipper is when you get to that point, so that you can pull it out of the way. I'm going to readjust this slightly because it seems like I have a little more fabric to that side than I did the other side. All right, so see how the bottom corners stick off slightly? That's okay. We will sew around the curve and then trim those corners off. So here you want to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So just be very careful to make sure you catch everything. Once you're finished, double check to make sure that you did. And if you didn't, this is really just a basting line because we will stitch over this whole part again. And you might find it easier to open up the zipper when you sew part of this, however you want to do that. All right, so 1/8 of an inch, tricky. So I'll apologize in advance because I'm sure everybody's not going to love that. But again, if it goes a little over 1/8, that's okay. Just keep it less than 1/4 of an inch so that these stitches are not visible on the exterior. To my zipper pull. So I'm going to, with my needle down, I'm going to open that up and move it so that I don't sew over the pull or have any weird like lumps or bumps in this area. Take your time to make sure it's lined up well after you move that. I'm going around that first bottom curve. I'm just ignoring that triangle that sticks out there, and sew around the curved portion. And just make sure that your front panel is not puckered underneath that. Trim the threads, and now I will, well, first let me look at the other side, make sure everything looks okay. And it does. I didn't sew any puckers into my fabric. And then just go ahead and trim those corners off, even with the curved edges of the back main panel. Or, I'm sorry, the pocket back panel. Okay. So now we want to take the front top panel and mark the center. Okay. We will put that right side together with the zipper. I'm going to open my zipper so it's not in the way. Kind of tuck the zipper pull inside. Just be careful of that when you're sewing this. So we want it right side together with the right side of the zipper. Match the centers first. And then match the straight end there with this mark that you made on the back from the paper pattern piece, and pin there. And then on the other side, repeat that process, and it's even with that line, and you will pin that in place. All right, and then pin between. And pin this between. All right, now we'll sew that together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, and you'll just start sewing at the line that you made. And I like to keep my hand underneath on that top panel to make sure that it's not getting wrinkled up as I go. And then I follow the curve by lifting the bag up. Sorry, you can't see the sewing part here really with that lifted up. Very last part, once you take that clip off and it's hard to hold it. Okay. Scary, I might sew through my finger like holding that in place. Alright, and now from the right side, when your zipper is closed, you can press this. You don't want to trim that seam allowance either because you'd be trimming off that zipper and that will make it fray. So you can just press this flat and then you have a completed bag front. And let's see. Let me see how long we've been filming here. About 45 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and call that a video. And then we'll come back and we'll probably finish the exterior in the next video. So